Natalie, hi, happy Friday. How are you?
Hey, Scotty. Happy Friday. I'm doing great. Driving a
So
fun
I
truck
have
this
to ask
weekend.
you before we introduce our
Sure.
podcast guest this week, what have you been driving this week?
Ooh, I've been driving the Hyundai Elantra N.
The Elantra N. What do you think of it?
I love it. It's sporty. It's fun. It makes the everyday drive that much more exciting.
I feel like those cars are the ones that bring out your inner teenage boy.
Oh, definitely. I'm just like, okay, we've got to watch it. And it's red, so, it's a little dangerous.
Yes, it is a little bit of an attention magnet, a red car.
Oh, yeah.
What does it feel like to drive that car?
I love the Elantra, and it really feels like sporty. It hugs you. You feel like you're one with the car, and it has fun racing details. So, you're taking that off the track on your daily drive, and it makes me smile. That's what I love about it.
It makes you smile. And that's what every car should make you smile for different reasons, not always for the same reason, but it should make you smile. So I think the Elantra, I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I believe it is one of the cars that's on our list of best car deals right now. And that's something we've been working on this week and published recently is a list of best car deals through Labor Day. But my feeling is, car deals come and go. And it's a solid list of great cars and SUVs. But also if you miss that, you can always go back and look for another deal later because manufacturers are always incentivized to sell those cars. So we'll see those deals come back throughout the fall and at the end of the year. And that's my way of introducing when we think about car deals and we think about low interest rates, we think about no money down, we think about things that help us to get into the car we want, like that Hyundai Elantra N, but in a more affordable way. And that is where our podcast guest for this week comes in. Leslie Morris is the CEO of Chase Auto. And Chase Auto, she'll elaborate a little bit more on this, but they work with something like 3/4 of all car dealers. They work with a number of car manufacturers, car makers. They work with customers directly. So however it is that you want to find not only the best deal, but the best financing and a solid, a rock solid finance partner to make sure that you're going to be financially healthy and that you get the car you want and need. That is the mission of Chase Auto. And so I'm really excited to share this podcast because Leslie Morris is she is the star in this world who I think every woman should look toward because Leslie her advice is so great and what she's accomplished is so great. And so I'm not going to say any more. Let's go to the conversation with Leslie Morris. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, how are you?
I am so good. I'm very good today. I got my hair done, so I'm feeling a little fancy. But thank you. I am really excited to sit and spend some time with you. I'm so in awe of what you do, not only as a professional, but as a mom and as how you devote your time to efforts that mean a lot to you. I love that the whole composition of where you live your life. And so I am really excited to dig in and learn more about you and share more about you with our audience. So are you ready?
I am.
Okay, let's go. So why don't we get started by filling everybody in on you and what you do, your job, and how you got to this job. So tell us, what do you do and how did you get to this job?
Sure. So I am currently the CEO of Chase Auto, which is one of 7 lines of businesses at Chase, which is a part of JP Morgan Chase. And I have been at this firm now for a little over 7 years. And I have had the good fortune of this being now my fourth role at the firm, and super excited and proud to be leading the auto business, which I was first introduced to 2.5 years ago, where I joined the auto team leading our private label captive finance business.
So what do you mean by private label captive finance business? What is that?
Yes, I know it's a mouthful. So if you think about the traditional auto lending industry, there are some auto manufacturers who made a decision that they wanted to have their own financing capability for loans and leases for customers. And they created these companies, and they are called captive finance companies. So as an example, General Motors has a captive finance company. BMW has their own captive finance company. But there's some OEM brands who said, you know what, that's way too complicated. We want to outsource that capability to another company. And so we provide automotive financing, loan and leasing on a private label basis for auto manufacturers. So as an example, one of our very favorite partners, Subaru, Subaru Motors Finance is actually Chase, providing all of the captive capabilities for Subaru on an outsourced basis.
So it's sort of a nice comfort factor that Subaru does what they do really well. They design and build great cars, and then they bring in a trusted partner like Chase to make sure that your loan is on the up and up, and that it's well cared for, and that you're not going to run into some rude surprise down the line with weird, wonky financing, because you've got Chase there providing that service.
Absolutely. And then honestly, because we're part of the Chase family, there's so much additional value that we bring to an auto OEM. And so 85 million US households have some form of a Chase account. And we help our auto OEM partners acquire customers by selling their new products and capabilities into our own customer base. And then we have a whole multitude of assets that we have that we actually allow our partners to leverage to grow their business. And so we are very much uniquely positioned in the marketplace. Some of our competitors are traditional banks, and some of our competitors are credit unions, and some of our competitors are auto manufacturers who have their own financing businesses. But we bring something very special to the market that I'm very proud of.
That's fantastic. So if I'm a Chase customer, say I have that fancy Chase Sapphire card, I might get a little note in the mail that says, hey, you could come look at a Rivian, and maybe an invitation to test drive a Rivian or test drive a Subaru or some of the other brands that you partner with.
Absolutely. Or alternatively, we may say, you're a Chase Sapphire customer, and we have this really cool experience for you to spend the weekend in Carmel with the Range Rover team. So there's many different ways that we talk to our customers about our partner products.
So a nice reason to have that Chase Sapphire card, huh? Besides the beautiful airport lounges.
Of course, that, or if you have a bank account, or if you have a mortgage with us, one of the benefits of the franchise is many of our customers have more than one account with the firm. And part of what we want to be able to do is to provide the best of what our firm could offer to all of our customers in a unique way.
But that's not all you do, because even if, say, I'm not in the market for Subaru, I really want a Toyota, but yes, I want to finance, but I really don't want to finance with Toyota. I want to go with a traditional bank. I can finance through Chase Autos as well, correct?
Absolutely. And that's a really great question. So we talked a little bit about some of the partners that we work with. And so we have 3 lines of business, one of which is our private label captive finance business. The second of which is our retail lending business. And so what that means is when you're a customer and you go into an auto dealership and the salesperson disappears to the F&I office, what they're basically doing is they are bidding out your loan to multiple banks. And the dealer is saying, okay, which bank is going to give me the best offer that I can then share with the customer? And that retail business, our second line of business, is designed to make sure that we're one of the lenders that dealers consider. And our job is to make sure that they want to pick Chase as the lender more than they want to pick the competition. And so that is also a very important part of our business. We have a relationship with 12,000 dealers today. For context, there's 18,000 dealers in the US. And so part of our strategy is to continue to grow the number of dealers with whom we work for auto lending. And then the other piece to our retail business is we call it our indirect consumer business. So let me rephrase that. Auto dealership selling indirect, our direct to consumer business. So what does that mean? We will provide pre-approval offers for loans to our customers so they can go into a dealership and say, I've been pre-approved for $50,000 to get a vehicle, and present that to the dealer. So that's an important part of our retail strategy as well. So far I've talked about two lines of businesses we have, and then we have a third, which is our commercial services business, where we are providing both auto lending solutions, as well as deposit and treasury and cash management solutions, as well as wealth management solutions to auto dealers. So we have three lines of businesses today.
I love that as a consumer, I'm shopping for a car and I can walk into the car dealer and know I've already done my paperwork, I've already been approved, I have an offer from Chase to finance my new car. And now all I really have to do is focus on buying the car and getting the right car, the right features, and the right price, within my budget, and not have to negotiate that finance piece. And I will say, every time I bought a car, that's exactly how I did it. And leaving that stress at the door of having to think about finance on top of everything else, because it's a big purchase and there's a lot to know. And so I really appreciate being able to do that. How many of your customers function that way, and how many of the loans that you process come through the other ways?
So I would say today, the vast majority of our lend is through traditional means, through going through auto dealerships, but our direct to consumer offering is rapidly growing. It's very, very popular. Our customers tend to live within Chase digital channels. And so imagine if you're going into the Chase mobile app and you're checking your credit card balance, or you're seeing how much money do you have in your checking account. While you're there, that is the opportunity for us to talk about this offering as well. And it's become increasingly popular over time. And it's a very, very important part of our strategy for all the reasons that you said.
Yeah. And it's nice too, I will say, the last time I purchased a car and financed it, I did it through an app. In fact, the last two cars I bought, three cars I bought, actually, I did only with my phone. It was 100% done right here. That's where I did all my research, all my communication, all my finance shopping, everything was done on the phone. And crazy, right? I never would have thought that a decade ago, never would have thought that. But now I can't imagine you not having an app and not functioning that way in car shopping and purchasing.
For sure. And I think that's become more normalized, right? Yes. You have some, EV manufacturers who that is primarily how they don't have physical dealerships. That's primarily how they sell their vehicles, is through that digital experience. And we work with those types of partners as well.
Yeah, and that's growing. Rivian doesn't even like to give you a key fob anymore. They make one, but they don't want to. They want you to just use the app on your phone to lock, unlock, drive the car, charge it, anything that you need to do, you can do with your phone. And I think that's my favorite thing about new cars that have a digital app that you can use to drive the car. Yeah. Is never having to have a key, and all, having everything in one place, whether, the connection to the brand, the connection to, in terms of personal finance, to my bank and to my car shopping, my car loan, having all that in one place and with me all the time is so valuable. Do you have a car?
I do.
You do? What do you drive?
So I drive a Range Rover Sport Hybrid.
Ooh.
But I also want to give a special shout out because you mentioned Rivian. We love our Rivian partner. They are a very, very important strategic partner of ours. And so what you described about them wanting everything to be digital, for sure, that's very much consistent with their brand ethos around making sure that it's like a tech first product. And so they're great partners and great friends. So I have to give a special shout out to them as well. And Range Rover Sport is the car that I drive. I mentioned a hybrid, my first time having a hybrid. I'm a huge, huge fan of a hybrid. And JLR, who manufactures the Range Rover Sport, is also one of our important partners today. So it's been a great vehicle.
Yeah, that's a beautiful car. I love the minimalist interior. That was, I think the thing that won my heart was it's so simple and elegant inside.
It is. But you know what my favorite part is?
What's that?
The sound system.
Ooh.
I love music, and it has the best sound system of any car I've ever owned. And I would say this is probably the 5th car I've owned so far. So it's a good.
They're everything that Range Rover does is just so smart. They really think so deeply about everything. And the sound system, thankfully, is equally as well thought out as everything else they do. It's pretty amazing. Have you taken it off-road?
I have not taken it off-road.
Wow.
I live in New York City. And yes, I do drive my car in New York City, which makes actually having a hybrid, it's very useful because hybrids, you don't necessarily get as much mileage on the vehicle, but if obviously you have the security of it being gas as well, if you need it. I've done off-roading with the JLR team at events, and I have to say, I don't trust myself to take my vehicle off-roading without getting stuck somewhere, but I can attest to the fact that they are great cars off-road.
It's always better to drive someone else's car off your own, I will say. But I feel like we lived in just outside of New York City forever, and we moved to Texas a few years ago. And I feel like the steep driveways and steep mounds that the snowplow would leave in the winter, and you never knew what you were driving into in the suburbs in the winter, was pretty much off-roading. I needed
Yes, very true, very true.
And it was like the surprise off-road experience. Like, oh, guess what? We're getting 5 inches of snow in the next hour, and you still have to get home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or the occasional flood on the West Side Highway, or the occasional flood on the FDR. It's good for that too.
It is. It really is. And you think you live in the city and you're not going to see those things, and you absolutely do. So I want to talk a little bit about your journey to not just banking, but also automotive. Let's take us back just a little bit. Where did you grow up, and where did you go to school?
So I grew up in New York City. So I am a New Yorker through and through, grew up in Manhattan. And for college, I went to Yale, and then I went to Harvard Business School. In many ways, I had a very unconventional background for someone who has found herself leading a financial business within a bank, in that I was an English major. And I was the prototypical liberal arts major who, when I graduated from college, I decided that I wanted to be an M&A banker focused on technology. And at the time, I knew nothing about finance, and I knew nothing about technology. And that one decision to take a risk and do something completely different, like, for sure has shaped the trajectory of my career in some expected ways, but also in some very unexpected ways.
So how did you decide M&A in technology?
So it was like an element of the company found me. But most importantly, I knew I wanted to go to business school, and I knew I wanted to do something where I could have a lot of responsibility at a very young age. And the company that I went to work for was a boutique investment bank, and it fit the bill. And so that's why I said, you know what, this is the place for me. In many ways, in hindsight, it never occurred to me that it wasn't an industry that I couldn't learn. It never occurred to me that I couldn't pick up finance. And I was the person who said, you know what, to make sure that I can keep up with this job, I took classes at NYU to shore up my finance and accounting skills. And then I was off to the races. But I went into that opportunity with a goal in mind of going to business school.
So you said you took some extra classes to brush up on those skills that maybe were not what you learned in undergrad school. But there must have been some people behind you who said you can do this.
Yes.
Who encouraged you?
Yes. So I guess I would say a few things. One of which is, for sure, my parents and how they raised me for sure informed my confidence to be able to say my superpower is my ability to learn. And, I also, interestingly, if I think about like my educational experience as a child, I also went to unconventional progressive schools where the ethos was very much you learn by doing. And so there is an element of my personality and how I approached that first job that was very much like, I will just figure this out. I also, though, happened to work for a company that their philosophy was talent is talent. And no matter what you study, these are skills, capabilities, industries that can be learned. And I was fortunate to find myself in a corporate culture that really embraced that. And then I also was fortunate that I had great mentors at the company that I started that really, I think, nurtured my development as a young professional. And in fact, after I went to Harvard Business School, I actually went back to work at that same firm post-business school because I realized so much of what I was interested in the industry and what I wanted to do with my life was informed by that first experience. But again, I had this nucleus of really great company, really great culture, really great mentors. And it also was at a time in the industry where all things tech, much like today, but more so with a lot of the headlines that we talk about today in AI, but all things tech was really where the industry was moving. And so, part of it was me, part of it was luck, part of it was the right opportunity at the right time, the right mentors, and the right mindset.
And so when you were working in that first boutique firm and thinking about going into M&A and technology, two very male-dominated areas, were you the only or one of the only women, or did you feel, I know you said that you didn't think that you couldn't do this, but did you feel alienated or lonely at all?
So I was definitely one of a few, right? I was one of a few always. I'm still oftentimes in meetings where I'm the only, or I'm one of a few. I didn't feel alienated, but for sure, being in finance and at that time being in tech and, at various stages in my career, as I continue to grow as a senior executive, you do find yourself in rooms where you don't necessarily see people who look like you, for sure.
What advice would you have for women who do find themselves in that situation, especially younger women who might be intimidated? How do you get past your own reservations, but also maybe some biases of the other people around you?
Yeah, it's a really good question, right? I think first and foremost, knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. And if you do exceptional work, cream will always rise to the top. You will always get noticed. And I also think upon reflection, when I look back at my career, because this is the 6th company I've worked for in my career and the 16th job that I've had. And I have always been the person who raised their hand to do the one thing no one else wanted to do. And the benefit of that is you become an expert in something that not everyone knows about. And then that puts you in a position where if people have questions, you're the person who can answer the question. And so it gives you a sense of confidence that you have the insight or you've mastered a subject that not everyone is as informed about. And that in and of itself supports your power and influence in the room. And I think having done that a few times for sure has helped me build my confidence to be in rooms where I may be only one of a few.
Do the thing that nobody else wants to do. That is incredible advice and hard. Was it hard to say, oh, I don't know anything about that, but nobody else wants it, so I'll do it? Was that difficult?
It wasn't difficult because I think another piece to my story, when you talk about I was an English major who went into technology M&A, is I also knew that I always wanted to be a CEO. I knew if you look at what's in my business school application, it says that when I grow up, I want to be a CEO. And at the time I said the CEO of a technology company because I had spent a big portion of my career in technology. And I think when you have a sense of a goal of what you're trying to get to, it makes those trades make more sense and less intimidating because you're doing it to learn and grow as a means to an end of something that's very intentional.
So let's skip ahead to Chase. Tell us what that transition was like taking the job, the first job at Chase.
So Chase has been a really, really great experience. Prior to my coming to Chase, I was at American Express, where I had a variety of different roles, including in corporate development and leading a part of American Express's merchant services business. And when I came to Chase, it was specifically to lead our partnerships for payments and banking, with the idea ultimately that I would become the head of corporate development. And so my 4 jobs at the firm have first been a partnerships role, head of corporate development for Chase, where I got to work on all of our strategic acquisitions and investments for Chase, as well as sit on the firm-wide investment committee. Such an amazing learning opportunity because when you do those types of jobs, you have to learn really fast because you see so much so quickly across every single line of business. And then after doing that for a couple of years, I became the president of our private label business in auto, where we started our conversation. Oh. And then I've now been the CEO of Chase Auto now for 9 months.
Amazing. So as you have built your career and sat in these different seats, I'm sure you've come across a lot of women who look at you and think, wow, I'd like to be in her seat someday. What advice do you have for women who are pursuing a career and would also like to be CEO?
So I would say never give up on your dream. Be persistent, right? I think that I would also say be open-minded to what your next opportunity could be. Like if you had said to me that my path to being a CEO would have been the CEO of auto, if you said that to me 20 years ago, I'd say, I don't like what auto? Like I wouldn't have been able to imagine that this would have been the business that I was a CEO of. And if you had said to me several years ago that, or 20 years ago, that I would have worked at the different types of companies that I had worked at, I wouldn't have necessarily predicted that. And so part of my advice would be open-minded to taking a chance on roles, even if it's in unconventional spaces or on unconventional topics or industries, because if I reflect back on my experience, I like that I've had the diversity of experiences that I've had. It's the lived experiences that I have had that has developed my instinct for me to be able to be effective in the current role that I have, as well as in my prior roles. And so I would say my advice as well is to be open-minded.
So now I'm going to ask that question and kind of flip it on its head a little bit. You're a mom, you have 2 kids,
yes.
Kids, and hard to believe because goes like that, right?
Yes.
What do you want your kids to take away from your career?
Really, really great question. So I have a 23-year-old son and a 21-year-old daughter. And I would say, if I think back and reflect back on my career and also how I spend my personal time, I'm very much a mission and purpose driven person. And if I think about my role here, my role on the board of Dance Theater of Harlem, where I serve as the vice chair, my role on the board of IQVIA, which is one of the leading clinical trial and health data sciences companies globally, what they all have in common is a mission and a purpose that I personally believe in. And so what I would want them to take away is the importance of that. Like, as you think about your choices, think about what you want to anchor your mission and purpose to, and let that set the compass of where you're trying to go, but also be flexible about the many different paths that you can take to get there.
That's amazing. You know, I think being a who we are authentically and pursuing our mission and our passion is one of the best gifts we can give our kids. Thank you, Leslie. I'm told by your team you must rush off to another. So thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us. And I hope that our paths will cross again. And I love that you're blazing new paths, not only in banking, but also in automotive.
Thank you. And it's been a pleasure having this conversation today. And I too hope our paths will cross. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks, Leslie.
And we're back, Scotty. I love that she drives a Range Rover Sport. It's like so cool.
It is. And in New York City, no less. That is,
right?
That's a tough place to drive. I know, I've done it. I don't like it. I used to not mind it so much, but it is tough. And it takes a tough person to be able to commandeer a car around that city.
What'd you think about it?
Well, so I'm going to tell you about my takeaway from the conversation with Leslie and what surprised me, but also didn't surprise me. And that is, she is one tough, determined person. And when I say determined, I don't mean like I've decided this is, I'm going to do this no matter what. She just determined what was right for her and did not listen to any of the chatter, the naysayers, the barriers that people like to build around their little worlds to keep others out. She doesn't see any of that. She knows what she's good at. She knows she's really good at it. And she just goes and does it. And I think that's where the inspiration is so strong, because we know, and then we allow the world to let us doubt. We know what we're good at. We know where our talents are. We know what we're passionate about. And then we hear some idiot on, social media or whatever going, well, if you don't know how to blah, 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 then you can't blah, blah, blah. And we listen, we're stupid in one way. And that is we listen to that stuff, and we should not. And she doesn't. And I think that's where that's where I'm so inspired and where I want to know more. I think we need to have another conversation with Leslie, because I want to know more. I want to know more about how we can really fine tune that inner voice so it doesn't let the little things trip us up in our world. But I love what she's built. I think when you go to someplace, you get something in the mail or you get an email and it says, hey, you're invited to come do this thing because you have this credit card. So smart. But to know that not only can I come do this thing, but then they can help me with the financing. They can help me fine tune my loan, that they can help me get the best, not only the best interest rate, but find the best payment structure. Maybe it isn't a 4-year loan. Maybe it's a 5-year loan. Maybe they might say, don't do a 7-year loan. You're going to regret that. So, but that they're there as a partner, and that they're there as a partner with car brands and with dealerships makes me feel safe, in that I'm not walking into a dealership and subject to some sort of predatory lender, that they are working with reputable lenders like Chase and women like Leslie, who are making all this happen, and mowing down barriers left and right is pretty amazing.
We love that about Leslie. It inspires me always, like that inner voice. So I can't wait to hear more from her.
Yeah, me too. Me too. All right. Thank you so much for joining me for this podcast, Natalie, and everyone there. I'm Scotty Reese, your host of What Drives Her. Natalie Marola is your co-host and producer. Our editor, Steph Howard, music by Envato Elements. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can view this podcast on YouTube. If you haven't been over there, go over there and subscribe to What Drives Her, the podcast from A Girl's Guide to Cars. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you next time.